What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we know that the Switch has been a sales beast basically since it came out, but now with some new information, it appears it's finally hit a major milestone and overcome a certain system. And then on the other side, the Xbox Series is actually bringing up some concerns around its performance when compared to the Xbox One, but we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Starfield because, of course, it's Starfield launch week. A lot of anticipation and hype around this game, now with even a patch being detailed, as well as just leaks all over the place. And we'll also be taking a look at Sea of Stars because the reviews are now out, and it looks like 2023 just keeps on going. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with a PlayStation Plus Essentials game that appears to have gotten out there a bit early from who else but D-Labs. They tend to basically tell us about the games 3 or 4 days before Sony just posted on their PlayStation blog, and it appears this time, which you can see posted up over on their website, is going to be Saints Row 2022. So that's going to be apparently the headline game for next month. So a couple days from now, maybe even today, just ahead of September 1st, we should see Sony announce Saints Row going into the service. This is a game that has been patched a lot really since it came out. I think there's some additional content too, and this is a title that I stubbornly beat. It was one of those games where I'm going through it and I'm like, you know what, I have to beat this game. Like, it's not going to beat me. It's the stubbornness came out, and I basically hate beat the whole thing. And not really a game I recommend necessarily to go out and buy, but if it's part of PlayStation Plus, yeah, and you have the service, it is a game you can download and probably get a couple of hours of fun out of the ridiculous nature of the game and kind of that open world style. So, hey, if you have PlayStation Plus and this does pop up next month, might be worth a download just to see what it's all about. Also, we have a new Analogue Pocket that's been announced that I have to figure out who exactly asked for this, which this is posted up over on their Twitter account, where they say introducing Analogue Pocket Glow in the Dark. Available in highly limited quantities. It's going for $250 and it's on sale September 1st. So later this week, and then it will be shipping out starting next week. So I guess the idea is, I don't know if at night you can't find it. Oh wait, now you can because it's glowing in the dark as opposed to the standard Analogue Pocket that I have that's just like black plastic. And I just turn on the light. Now there it is, right? Or I guess it's a special edition, a limited edition thing that I guess would just be fun to have if you want your system to be always glowing at night. Or I guess if you drop it under your bed or something when you're playing just before you go to sleep, it's easy to find. People are just trying to come up with reasons as to why this exists. Just seems kind of like a fun gimmick sort of release. So hey, if you want a glow-in-the-dark handheld system that can play all kinds of Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance stuff, I guess check it out later this week. Oh, and in what should be a surprise to no one, Microsoft has basically gotten rid of the $1 Game Pass deal, which this was shown over on Wario64's Twitter account. It says Microsoft has apparently eliminated the $1 Xbox Game Pass trial, once again, just before the release of Starfield. Some images showing that it is gone, or before and after pictures, basically. And yeah, this shouldn't surprise anyone. This is their big release that they look at and go, okay, this is what's going to get people to sign up for Game Pass. They don't need the $1 deal in their mind anymore because they have the games or the content to do it. Whereas before it was, okay, why not? It's $1 to try out Game Pass. I'll give it a shot. Maybe I find a few things I like and then I forget that I'm signed up, which is what basically all these corporations hope for when it comes to subscription service, whether it's movie streaming services or games. You kind of forget, oh yeah, charge me 10 or 15 bucks. I'll get it next time. And then you don't, and then you don't again. But in this case, you would legitimately go out of your way to sign up to play Starfield. So technically for them, the $1 deal is no longer necessary. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with some of the sales performance for the 3 major consoles. And this may surprise some of you to hear about with the Switch, the PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series in the US. Now, this was a report that was published on gamesindustry.biz with the help of Circana, who was known previously as the MPD Group. They just kind of renamed and rebranded all of that. But let's take a look at how the different systems are performing compared to previous iterations from the platform holder, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. First, though, we'll start with the PlayStation 5. Again, all this being US-based, major market, and for Xbox specifically, Microsoft, the most important market. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Now, taking a look here, they do start by talking about the PlayStation 5, saying despite the supply constraints early in the generation, each console is comparing well to prior hardware releases. On a comparative basis, PlayStation 5 is now trending 5% above PlayStation 4 and 87% ahead of PlayStation 3 in time-aligned units sold life to date. Now, that shouldn't surprise anyone with the PS3 because that got off to a dreadful start. You just go back and look at the E3 where they introduced it, it was rough the whole way through, whether it was the price or the fact that they dropped the PSP on stage. Or the giant enemy crab. I mean, really, there's just a lot you can pick from there. The PS4... that's really important for Sony. They've been trying to catch up to the PS4 worldwide this entire way. And a lot of that had to do with the supply shortages. Now, though, seeing the PS5 jump ahead in the US, again, a major market that Sony is really focusing on more and more, especially this generation compared to previous ones. I think that bodes well for the PS5 going forward. However, things are a little different for Xbox, with the Xbox Series trailing Xbox One by 10%, but it leads the Xbox 360 by 6%. And I know this might be confusing to some of you because the Xbox 360 is Sony or Microsoft's best-selling console, even coming off of Sony's big PlayStation 2 generation. I mean, it took over market share there for a while, and the PS3 technically edged out right at the end. But that's basically when neither of them really cared necessarily about the sales as much as they were both on to the next generation. So you might be wondering, okay, well, how is it trailing the Xbox One but ahead of the 360? The 360 was a very slow starter, and probably because it was coming off the original Xbox and the PS2 generation again, where a lot of people were focused on Sony. The 360 got out ahead a year early, and then it really built up momentum with a lot of the partnerships and exclusive deals they were doing to kind of bolster the lineup of games. And then they got a lot of their first party stuff rolling with things like Gears of War, Halo 3, and then the rest was sort of history. The Xbox One got off to a pretty fast start and then started to slow down pretty quickly. So right now, the Xbox Series trailing the Xbox One is, specifically in the US, not great, I'd say, at this point. And that's obviously something that Microsoft is going to have to be working on heavily here in the US, since that is their major focused market. And I think they can do that with things like Starfield coming up, Forza, of course, around the corner. And I think next year is going to be pretty big for Xbox, especially like the next 2 years. They seem to be setting themselves up and getting into that cadence, as they have said before, one large release every single quarter, whereas you look at 2022, and I don't even have to be the one saying it anymore. Phil Spencer was at Gamescom saying, yeah, it was a dry year. It wasn't good for the Xbox brand, the Xbox console, the ecosystem, any of that. But now it appears that's behind them, and they have their sights set forward, starting with Starfield. And I think when you start getting that kind of software on the platform, and let's face it, buying Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty, having that marketing, especially in the US, yeah, it's going to accelerate sales, whereas the Xbox One, remember, as it got into like its midway point, started to slow down. So I think the series will catch the Xbox One and probably beat it fairly handily, I think, by the end of this generation, especially in the US. However, the big one to look at here, because of the implications when it comes to the historical milestones, would be the Nintendo Switch, as it is continuing its sales momentum. A lot of this having to do with the success of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and US lifetime sales of the Switch hardware finally surpassed those of the Wii. In the US market, this happened during July 2023, with the Switch trailing the Xbox 360 by less than 1 million units, and the PS2 by fewer than 5 million units. So it should catch the Xbox 360 in the US. I don't think it's going to catch the PS2 in the US. Now, it doesn't mean that the Switch won't catch the PS2 worldwide, because what this should really show you is just how strong Japan has been for Nintendo with the Switch. I mean, we see the numbers outright, over 30 million have sold, but that should tell you something if it just now passed the Wii in July. But the Wii was also very, very popular in the US, especially in the span of like 3 or 4 years. It absolutely exploded in terms of popularity. If you were trying to find a Wii during that time period, I probably don't have to tell you how difficult all of that was. But now the Switch has passed the Wii in the US, I really do think at this point, sights should be set on the PS2 and the DS, because when we start getting the numbers coming up here from Nintendo in their next financial report beginning of November, and then when we hear about their holiday, I think it's going to be almost a certainty that it will at least match the PS2 and the DS worldwide. So it's just another milestone for the Switch. Seems to be taking out a lot of those recently. Next up, let's talk about Sea of Stars. It's out today, but reviews dropped yesterday, and it just looks like 2023 continues to roll along with high quality release after high quality release, and Sea of Stars seems to fit right in there, as we have multiple Metacritic pages to look at, because really they just kind of sent out like a spread of review codes across all the different systems. It's not really focused in on any one console. Like we might look at the PS5, for example, for a game, and that's where the majority of the reviews were. No, there's legitimate diverse lineup of different consoles that the game was reviewed on. So I guess we'll start here with PC, where that had at least 27 reviews, and that comes in at an 89. Let's see, we have Game Grin at the top here saying Sea of Stars is an amazing looking and sounding title that has captured all you love from classic turn-based RPGs and improved upon it. And I mean, looking at the split, 27 positive and 0 mixed, 0 negative. You got to go all the way down into like the high 70 to low 80s to get to the bottom score for PC. If we move over to PS5, there are at least 12 reviews on that coming in at a 90, with Player 2 saying a game that wears its inspiration on its sleeve, but then still has something unique to say with a flavor all of its own. Sea of Stars is a truly unique and brilliant title that must be experienced. If we go over to the Switch, there were 7 reviews, that one coming in at a 91. There was one mixed review in here, though, that I saw that was from Digitally Downloaded, where it says Sea of Stars deserves to be played, and almost everyone who does play it will enjoy it. It's a JRPG made for JRPG fans by people who truly love the genre. But they say the sad reality is that most past stitches that lack the self-awareness to break free of being pale homages are doomed to fade, while the classic works they ape remain eternally relevant. But for now in 2023, if you've got some time to spare, you could do far worse than Sea of Stars. It's an interesting excerpt there to put on Metacritic. Anyway, going over to the Xbox, 6 reviews with a 90. So again, across the board, this seems to be averaging right around that 89 to 90 mark. And for Sea of Stars, the only issue is there's just so many games out. I get that some people are probably going to look at this and say, I mean, I'll get to it when I can. It's going to go in the backlog because, I mean, obviously, we have Starfield coming up on Friday. We just had Armored Core come up, and then you get into September, October, November. I mean, the game releases, the hits, they just keep coming one after the other. But this is a game that I really would like to get into and spend some time with. It's just going to be finding the time. The good news, though, is it is going into PlayStation Plus, I believe extra tier. It's going in there. And then it's also going into Game Pass. So if you have either one of those services, you can at least add it to your library or just download it. And then if you get a chance, check it out for a couple of hours and see what you think. But I am looking forward to, when I can find the time, check out Sea of Stars and take a trip back to the simpler days of the 16-bit JRPG era. Next up, let's talk about Starfield, and a patch that you'll definitely want to have downloaded on day one, as it is a day one patch, but it is coming in at 15 gigabytes for the Xbox and roughly 13 gigabytes on PC. And Insider Gaming just happened to get all of the patch notes that you can see some of them here. And it looks like there are quite a few. We have performance and stability fixes, visual fixes, gameplay fixes, quest fixes, and then a whole host of other ones that aren't necessarily just listed here outright. So keep that in mind, because I definitely see a lot of discussion around Starfield right now online. It's interesting how the conversation is going, because it's pretty obvious that people who have the game early, some from, I'm sure, Bethesda, others, I guess, from retail, are just putting out all kinds of gameplay snippets here and there that are then being interpreted differently by people who haven't played the game at all. So yeah, that discourse is, it's quite fascinating. So far from what I've seen with a lot of leaked footage and images and discussion around mechanics, the game looks as expansive as I was expecting and looks very exciting, especially if you enjoy what Bethesda is good at making, which are these immersive single-player RPG games. So I'm looking forward to it on Friday, although I'm going to try to download it and get it started immediately. Thursday night at midnight. Yes, this is one of those games where it's a midnight release game for me. So I'm going to take a shot at it, see if I can get through the tutorial in the first couple of hours, and hopefully give some impressions on the first 7 or 8 hours on the podcast Saturday night. But exciting stuff. Just make sure, of course, you have this patch installed before you fire things up. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about that Lenovo Legion Go device that leaked out a bit early. I believe Windows Central initially had the report, and then we had some more information come out from other websites. But in this case, we now have what seems to be the full spec sheet, and it sounds like this would be a press release that got out a bit early because there's also marketing material and other things attached to it. But we'll just stick with the spec sheet for now because I don't really know how Lenovo is going to be treating this one. It's not like they release game systems very often, and I don't know if they're striking or removing stuff, anything like that. But the spec sheet we can see here posted up over on Windows Report, who did have the full detail breakdown. Again, the marketing material, you can check that out in the sources below. But they even have the weight at 1.88 pounds. That's with the detachable controllers attached to the sides. The thing that strikes me as odd, the display, 8.8 inch, 2560 by 1600 at 144 hertz and 500 nits. So this is still paired with the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme. That's the same chip that's in the ROG Ally. The interesting thing though is that the RAM is pretty fast. It's 7500 megahertz LPDDR5X on board, 16 gigabytes. So while I think the resolution is complete overkill and is just unnecessary, they probably could have gone with 1080p and it would have been better off because you're just not really going to play at that resolution with this sort of chip and the memory bandwidth that's available. I guess they figure, hey, it's something we can tout in the marketing that makes it a bit easier and is directly comparable to things like the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck as to why it's just better, just because the screen's larger. But then I also look at the battery. It's about 20% larger than what we have with the ROG Ally. And again, we've talked about the battery life. Not exactly good with the ROG Ally, so I don't have high hopes for this being anything more than a 2 or maybe 2.5 hour battery life. They also appear to be packaging in 3 months worth of Game Pass with the Lenovo Legion Go. It just appears to be Microsoft once again cozying up to some of these PC handheld devices. I kind of think that Microsoft's just trying to figure out which one has the potential to actually make a run against the Steam Deck, and what Microsoft needs to do is adapt Windows to be more friendly with these devices, because running Windows 11 now on one of these PC gaming handhelds, not a great experience when it comes to navigation and getting around. So that's why you see Asus and I guess Lenovo most likely just kind of build out their own UI, but that's still just laying on top of Windows anyway. So that's really what Microsoft needs to do. Get serious about this and make sure that Windows works well, especially with navigating and then also even game optimization. So we'll see if they decide to do that, but you should be seeing Lenovo announce the Legion Go, according to this report, on September 1st for $800. So get excited. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you picking up Sea of Stars? Well, okay, 55% say they're not interested. 23% say you're getting on PS Plus or Game Pass. 13% are waiting for a physical release. Yeah, the digital to physical split up when it comes to releases is kind of frustrating. I will give you that. 10% say, yes, I'm buying it ASAP. 55% seems about right. It's an indie game, sure, but it is based on just turn-based combat, menu-based combat, and that's not necessarily something that it is universally loved, I'll say. For me, somebody who remembers these games very fondly from that 16-bit era, I'm on board with it. Again, if I can find the time, I will absolutely be jumping into Sea of Stars, and I'm sure having an absolute blast with it, but it's not necessarily for everyone. However, they got the Game Pass deal, and they got the PlayStation Plus deal. So something tells me before the game even came out, they were in pretty good shape. And then we got the physical copy that I'll be picking up and putting on the shelf. So looking forward to Sea of Stars. Something tells me, though, they do pretty well with this release. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Sonic says, not N64, but I remember Wii, 360, and GameCube kiosks at Walmart. I miss those things. It convinced me to want plenty of games. That's why a good demo is important. Getting a taste of the game could be just enough to make you buy the game. Yeah, that's sort of how it was back then. I remember the best kiosks, though, were before the system came out. So with the Xbox 360, I remember we'd leave high school and one of my friends would drive us, because of course one had a car, so we'd go to the mall and they had a 360 set up with Call of Duty 2. I looked at that when you throw the smoke grenade. It's like, visuals aren't ever getting any better than this. This is incredible. But outside of that, I think the original Xbox was an awesome kiosk because it still played into the idea of it being it was like this alien technology, right? Because it had the green startup and all this, but the kiosk around it glowed green and it had Munch's Odyssey playing, and it was a different era, I will say that, different time. But yeah, those kiosks from way back in the day were really fun to walk up to and just see what was playing on the good old CRT that was hanging up. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the Switch finally passing the Wii in the US, the PS5 overtaking the PS4, and then the Xbox Series actually trailing behind the Xbox One. Do you think Microsoft can make up that gap and actually pass the Xbox One in the US by the end of this generation? And then also, what about Sea of Stars or Starfield? Are you picking either one of those up or even both? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.